Oh my gosh. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. There are so many unknowns when writing, publishing, and marketing your first business book. I applaud everyone who has managed to get a book out of their head and into a format that can be purchased. Simply publishing is not really the goal, though, right? And that's why I'm back with another author panel for my rebranded podcast, the Biz Book Publishing Hub. Stay tuned for a frank conversation about the highs and lows of being a business author. These authors participated in one of my Kindle cross-promotion campaigns in which business authors lowered their Kindle book prices to 99 cents. I organize these twice a year around Amazon Prime Days and Black Friday. Dozens of authors work collaboratively to spread the word and boost book sales. It's been a great way to generate interest in evergreen books published many years ago and celebrate recent publications. The best part is that our collaboration doesn't end when that campaign is over. Nearly every author opted to sign up for an author panel after the event. With me today are three authors. Erin Lebacqz is the author of High Value Writing, Real Strategies for Real-World Writing, and its companion workbook, which provides hands-on strategies for managing your writing choices. Irma Parone created the WinX decision-making series, authoring WinX, the problem-solving model to win exponentially with customers, employees, and your bottom line, which is a perfect book for business owners and leadership teams, and WinX for employees, the problem-solving model to unlock workplace success, which is wonderful for employees at all levels of an organization. And then we also have Penny Zenker, who is known as the Focusologist. She's the author of The Productivity Zone, Stop the Tug of War with Time, which shares a framework on how to avoid procrastination and perfectionism. Please join me in welcoming Erin, Irma, and Penny. Welcome, welcome. Erin, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about your book, who'd you write it for, all that good stuff. Let's dive right in.
Great. Thanks, Robbie. And thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. My workbook was written for my learners. I had a specific purpose for this one where I'd be teaching in professional development, companies, organizations, and people would say, well, that was neat. How do I practice? And I thought, I don't really want to recommend a 500-page textbook or something like that. So let me come up with something that has the strategies as well as some practice exercises. So in this case, it was nice because I felt like I had a specific focus, specific purpose, and then thinking of that audience carried me through how to best try to write it for them.
That's excellent. Thank you. And Irma, who did you write your book for?
For employers, business owners, and then their employees. So when I started writing my book, it was more of a leadership, broad-based, and people, experts in writing said, what's your focus? What's your focus? And I finally realized that I problem solve. So it's an 8-step problem solving model for employers and leaders. And then my next book that just came out a couple weeks ago is for employees so that they can all work off the same sheet of music, but focused on their areas of need.
I love how you describe the getting on the same page in such a beautiful way.
Thank you.
Penny, how would you describe the audience for your book?
I hate to say it, but it's everyone. I mean, we are all struggling with that tug of war with time. And so there's a lot of leadership and business stories as well as personal stories in the book, just to help us to, take back control of our time, our focus, and our productivity, and realize when we're over-functioning and under-functioning in that procrastination and perfectionism arena, and how to take back control.
Penny, when you were working on this book, did you have a sense of what success would look like? Were there particular metrics that you were tracking?
For me, that was my first book. And so my only metric was Amazon, as I really wanted and set the goal to become an Amazon bestseller. So I was looking at the number of books sold through Amazon. And of course, I also wrote it so that it would enhance my thought leadership and increase the number of speaking engagements that I was getting, because I was just kicking off my speaking career. So those were kind of the two things: the number of books sold, and then looking at the number of speaking engagements and the price point of my speaking engagements.
We're going to circle back for a success story about that latter point about whether it landed you some speaking engagements. But I'm going to come over to Irma. So Irma, when you've now got these 2 books, so when you're thinking about them, what is the success metric you're tracking, and did that evolve between book 1 and 2? Did you learn something that made you think, oh, I want to also pay attention to this?
Yeah. So my first book, I had nightmares before it was published, thinking nobody would want to read it. I mean, seriously, I could get into these nightmares, you die. And so my biggest metric was how many reviews I could get, feedback reviews. I wanted to know that it was well received and that it was helpful to companies. And so I pressed for that. And I know you're going to talk about that later, so I'll hold on. But that was really my first metric, was how much, good or bad, how much feedback could I get? And how could it help me move this process into organizations' hands?
Irma, did you have a particular number of reviews you were aiming for?
I did not. I really didn't. I mean, I'm up to 130 some for that book. The second book, I only have, I think, 8, but it just came out a couple of weeks ago. So
yeah,
I just wanted numbers, I just wanted numbers and information. I wanted to hear what I needed to fix. And like my second book, I've already redone it a little bit because there were a couple mistakes.
Got it.
So that's always my first thing. Is it a good book? Does it need to be fixed before I really push it out there?
Brilliant. Erin, you can join in this conversation as well. You wrote a book and then a companion workbook.
Right.
When you got started with all this, like what would success look like at the beginning, and how would you now define success, and is there a difference between the 2?
Yeah, I think I'm still on my path. In the beginning, I was really focused on my clients and students, participants, learners I would meet in different companies, and trying to ensure that I could bring in the book as I teach so that they wouldn't have that experience where you go to a training and then it's gone. I didn't want it to be a one-off learning experience. So I wanted my clients to have a book to further their learning and keep using the new strategies. But with this workbook, it is changing a little to now I have a second goal of trying to get, especially the workbook, which I think goes a little farther than the book, into colleges, whether it's business writing or MBA programs. And so I'm looking at that'll be kind of a second success metric after the orgs. Now I'm looking at the schools.
When we're first writing a book, because I've now published 3, I know that for my first book, I felt like I needed to write a book because I was a professional speaker. And that, like to Penny's point, kind of feels like a website or a business card. You got to have that book. And so the book I wrote was basically the message that I've been talking about for years. And I finally got it in written form, getting it out of my head. I did not, I was not drawn to the writing process. I'm trying to think of the most polite way to say I didn't love writing. It wasn't my favorite part of the process. And there was this moment though, when the book was getting ready to be handed off to the editor. And I had this realization that it was a good book, that it was a useful book, and that people should read this book. And that's what got me starting to think about the fact that the day that I was hitting publish, which was the day I was counting down to, was actually the beginning of the marketing of the book and not the end of a process. And it really, turns out I love the marketing part. So I got really excited and I started doing all this work even before the book was out, and I pushed out my publication. So I had time to build the launch team, and I set the goal for my very first book to get 100 reviews by launch day. Now I want to clarify something for those who are listening. The publication date and the launch date are not the same date. Now, I made a mistake my first time, and I had only 3 days between the publication date and the launch date, and I lost my mind a little bit. Now I do 2.5, 3 weeks, and I had 100 reviews by my launch date, 150 reviews globally by the end of the week.
Wow!
And it was a tremendous effort to build that launch team. So reviews is what I want to talk about now, because they're not easy to get. But as Irma was pointing out, they are so helpful for the author, but also for prospective readers. And even a bad review, if it's well written, meaning if it's informative, can help a future reader think, this is exactly the book that I want to have. And I always make the joke about my wife and her romance books. And if a book's like a 1 star because it has too much smut, she's like, "Ooh, what's that book?" Right? So like one person's yuck is someone else's yum. So Penny, I'm going to go to you. How, like, were you thinking about reviews at all before? How are you thinking about them now? And what has been your game plan to get not just this 5-star rating, but the written reviews, which is where that's the piece that's hard to get. And it's also really informative.
Yeah, I wish I knew then what I know now. So I had no focus on reviews at all. Didn't know how important they were in that context, because Amazon also will elevate the book when there's more reviews. And so the way I look at it now, I have a new book that's coming out September 3rd. And, so now I understand that I want to get as many reviews as possible, and what the value of those reviews really are. So I think that anyone who's listening, right, this is gold for them to already have best practices of how they can elevate their positioning, right, from the very beginning. So I'm all about the reviews, and I'm eager to hear some of your strategies. But I'm building a launch team. I think that's a critical way to get reviews. And also using LinkedIn to reach out to my target group to say, hey, I'd like to get your feedback on this book, and reach out and get their reviews from there.
I have a few things I want to follow up on there, Penny. First question I have for you is September 3rd. Is that your publication date or your launch date?
Well, so interesting that you should ask. I'm listening to you, and this time I'm working with a hybrid publisher. The first time it was self-published, and we didn't really determine that. So I would guess that that's the date it's going live on Amazon, which means it is technically the published date. Mm-hmm. And then I'll be looking at the whole month as the launch. So
yeah, and we can meet after if you want to go into the details. But I would pick like somewhere September 20 something as your launch date. To give yourself the time in between to get reviews on your book. Here's how I think of a launch date. The launch date is when your launch team has done the hard work of getting reviews written and published on Amazon, and you are now announcing it to the bigger, broader world. This is a successful book. Come check it out. You don't want to drive people to an Amazon sales page when there's no reviews and no sales and its book's not ranking and all that. But in that short time, if you have all of these people buying dozens of books, you're going to, if you're going to hit number one, it's a byproduct, right? It'll happen, right. But you're really focusing on those reviews. And then when you're asking for media attention or, companies just to notice it, you can have all those reviews kind of backing the quality of the book, particularly with all the AI generated stuff out there that maybe isn't as high quality. Erin, I'm going to come to you. How have you thought about reviews? What was your process?
Yeah, well, I'm going to share something that I wish I'd done that an author friend did, and she even shared her trick with me, and yet I still somehow chose not to do it. And listening to you all, I do have the issue with both my books where I did not have very many reviews before the launch date because I didn't segment out that time like you're talking about. But this other colleague of mine has a leadership book, and then towards the end, in the epilogue or notes or something to that effect, she wrote, hey, when we review this book, it helps other readers and it helps these ideas get out across Amazon. I would love it if you would leave me a review. And she wrote that in her book. And I sort of feel like I should have done that because many people want to support an author that they like or follow and just aren't quite sure how. And that would be a great way to do it. Did you do the same thing? Yeah.
So all three of I said four, I'm not working on a book right now. All three of my books have a section in the back that says basically a request, and it's thanking them for reading the book. And I made a shortcut link that brings them right to the Amazon page, to the part where they would write the review. And I gave them 3 prompts. And the prompts that I included, which are fairly generic: what is your most valuable takeaway or insight? What have you done differently, or what will you do differently because of what you read? And who would benefit from reading this book? And then I basically say 2 or 3 sentences is all you need. It would be amazing. Your feedback really helps get this book into the hands of those who need it most. And I think that helps, but I also know that a personal request with a lot of follow-up is probably what's needed more than even that. I mean, that is sort of the beginning of it. Irma, let's bring you in. What are your thoughts about reviews?
They're hard to get because I think, first of all, I've had people try to write a review 3 and 4 times and Amazon just doesn't post some. And so that gets frustrating, but I'm a good beggar. I mean, I beg, I go, please leave. I'm not asking for a good review. I'm asking for your honest feedback, and it doesn't have to be long. And I don't know, it's very hard to get people to understand how important reviews are for authors, I think.
I want to sincerely applaud you. So I'm looking at your book on Amazon, and this is a lesson I want everyone to understand. And you're a great example because you're a positive example. So you have 142 ratings. That's the stars, and you have a 5 out of 5. Congratulations. That's great too. But what I'm looking for is the number of written reviews. You have 127, and that's good on many fronts. One, that's a lot of reviews. So you clearly made an effort and followed through on that. And 2, the ratio between ratings and reviews is fairly close. I always wonder what the authors who have 110 or more ratings and less than 10 written reviews, but they walk around telling everyone they have 123 reviews. And I'm like, what? You've 7.
I don't even know how, because I try to review everybody's book. If people ask me to review their book, even if I haven't finished it, I'll grab some points in it and leave a review. And I think you have to write words in there, right?
No, you can actually just put stars. They changed that a few years ago.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah. Now, the thing that I want to mention, because Irma, you mentioned that sometimes people go to post a review and they can't. The number one reason they can't is that they haven't purchased $50 worth of products from Amazon, from that Amazon site. So like Amazon.com versus Amazon FR, Amazon, CA for Canada, that kind of thing. And that's less likely to happen in the United States, where I think we're getting packages delivered every day. It's more likely to happen in places like Europe, where they're less reliant on Amazon as a whole. So here's what I do is I collect reviews in advance via a Google form, right? I set this up if I'm working with authors on their launch strategy, they collect the reviews before the book's even published, which helps them track that they're on they're going to get close to that goal they already had. And then they give the person the review back with here's the instructions for how to leave a verified review, which means you buy the book and then you flip through the book and then you wait 6 hours and you post your review and all this stuff. So there's a whole process. But if I do that, and let's say someone comes back and says, I got an error message, it tells me I can't do this. I'm like, oh, here's probably why. And, since you wrote a great review, here are the other ways we can use the review. Do you have a Goodreads account? Are you willing to set one up? It's free. And then they can post it on Goodreads. Would you be willing to post it as a LinkedIn testimonial? And then I could share it with them that way. Would you be okay if I put it on my website? Would you be okay if I shared it on social media? Would you be okay if I made a graphic to share with your quote? May I tag you if I do that, right? So you can get permission for lots of other engagement. Once it's been written and you have it, it's not lost, even if it can't go on Amazon. So it's just like a way to think about if you're getting reviews from your likely prospects and referral partners, then these are worthwhile conversations to be having, whether or not the review gets posted, right? It's just about engagement.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. Penny, any aha moments? Because you got a book that's about to come out. So I feel like you're like the perfect person to be having this conversation.
Yeah. So let me tell you. So what I really like is that you said you're collecting them beforehand, and then you're feeding it back to them with, hey, here's the direct link. Here's how you go about that. What I like about that in the aha moment is the hard work is over once they filled in the form and done it. Then it's a copy and paste. So it's a higher level of commitment, and you get that commitment before it comes to the time when you actually need it posted. So since I have also a short window, for various reasons that I won't discuss here, but anyway, like when it goes on the 3rd, I want those to be posted as early as possible. So that's a great huge aha there for me.
I'm curious, other than reviews, which I could spend the hour on, what were the other challenges? Wave your hand if you've got something you're willing to share that's a challenge that you face. All right, Irma's got something.
Oh, I got a big one. So the title of my book is WinX. I wrote it with no space, WINX, so it looks like winks. So that's one thing. So people don't know how to, I'm thinking about just calling it winks because I don't know what to do with that. Now the second book, WinX for Winks for Employees, comes up easier. But the other thing I found was I did research on business books for that title, but I didn't look for children's things. So when you pull up WINX, all one word, there's all this stuff before me because it's some kind of a children's game or something. So be careful of your title. It'll haunt you.
I similarly have worked with an author who used words in the book title that didn't allow her to do certain things because the words are flagged by certain media companies. And while it attracts your people, right, by putting this language in, it attracts your people. She had an opportunity to do something with Times Square and then was told no. So like that level of like, oh my gosh, this wasn't just like, I can't do a Facebook ad. It was like, they got through all that red tape and then it was like, no, we can't have that. And there was like, well, can we, how can we put marks on it or something? So yes, I do think, I could see why you would choose to do something like that because it really clearly calls to you the people you want to hang out with, but also it may have some limiting effects. So yes, choose your titles well. Yes. And make sure it's not currently in use in lots of different ways and across different genres. Penny, do you have something you wanted to share about challenges?
I don't know. Maybe if you can ask the question in a different way. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure I have a challenge, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking for some of us, the challenge was getting the content out of our head. Or believing that it was something people should have been like, why me? There's that kind of like challenge, the head game part. And then there's like, okay, well now I've got, pieces of the book and now I've got to figure out how to move forward to the point of publication. And then there's the launching and marketing. Like there's these different phases. And I feel like different people get a little hung up on different parts. Like there's no universal, like some people love the writing part. Like that wasn't my favorite. I got easier like over time, but like some people that's the like, oh, I could just do this forever. And they end up with these like 180,000 word like manuscripts. You're like, you don't have a book. You've like 8.
Totally.
Okay. Penny, does anything come to mind?
Yeah, well, so I'm not, the writing process isn't easy for me. And actually what happened with my new book is it started out to be something different than what it became. So I think even though it was a painful birthing, it was necessary to get to where we got to. And one of the things that I learned, perhaps I can share what I learned about that challenge, is the more I talk about it, the more I'm the talking type of person, right? Not necessarily thinking, which is why it's hard to just get writing. And so a lot of people, they do their podcasts and they're talking after they've written the book. And even though I've been speaking on it for a year and a half, I found that as I started to do more podcasts and started talking about it, it grew very quickly because people ask different kinds of questions that then I can answer. And then I'm like, oh, yeah. So I would highly recommend anybody who's writing their book to actually do podcasts and have conversations and these interactions before they get deep into writing the book, or at least before they finish it, because I would write a very different book now, or not different, I shouldn't say, but there would be some meatier pieces or things like that, because I've learned so much since I've actually put it into print.
Penny, I'm glad you brought that up, because you're saying also a moment ago that this is what you're doing with your latest book, because you're engaging people in conversations about it now. And I think that's so helpful. I think a lot of times writers write in secret and for whatever reason, like don't want to be held publicly accountable to that process, but the outcome is probably going to be improved, but also you're building all that buzz and interest and people are waiting for the book. And that's what generates the beginning of a launch before like you have a book, like you start to plant seeds for people who might want to engage with you. And then they're on this journey with you. And if you are attracting the right people on that journey, it also leads to a pipeline for the offers that come after the book. I've had a couple of people recently referred to me for my book launch strategies. And I'm surprised when I get on the call, they have over 30 reviews on Amazon. And I mean written reviews. And I'm like, okay, so you're thinking about doing a relaunch. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And they're like, well, the book hasn't led to any revenue. And the first woman, I remember I said, okay, you've got 32 reviews. Tell me how you got those reviews, because you clearly made an effort. And I'm thinking her likely prospects are sitting right there, right? Like in those 32. And she says, my friends and family, they really came through for me. And I'm like, facepalm, because her friends and family don't have budgets. They don't have the problem that they urgently need solved, and they're not going to hire her. So we have to be careful that when we're aiming for those reviews and we're having those conversations like Penny's talking about, that we're doing it with the people who would be most impacted in a positive way by our message. And then we can also pull stories from those conversations, and that can bring our concepts to life in the book, which is going to help everybody else. It also makes us feel like, we're writing a book that people need. It helps us get to the finish line, right? It helps in all those ways as well, which, by the way, early reviews do that too. This is one of the things I love about collecting the reviews in advance, is that when you get those early reviews before the book's been published, it comes at a moment when the author is like gasping for air at the end of a marathon. They're just like, I'm done. I'm sick of this book. I don't want to talk about it. And then also those early reviews come in and they're just reinvigorated by people actually appreciating the outcome. So I want to switch gears here, if that's okay. And Erin, I wonder if you have an answer for this next one. I want to know what was the most effective marketing strategy that led to more book sales. And I'm asking you in particular because it sounds like you've been engaging with corporate. You're now talking about engaging with higher ed. Like bulk book sales like that is so much better for the bottom line of selling books than these individual sales on Amazon. So how have you approached that?
Yeah, it's kind of little by little. Thank you. Some of it has been just thinking, okay, my clients are my most likely customers, and trying to offer different price points. Maybe I'm going to do a presentation and I'll say, well, you could pay this for me to come, or you could pay this and it would include workbooks. And I try to always make that an attractive deal. So part of it has just been talking about my clients about the workbook. And then another thing that lately, little bits of marketing, I've been doing some mini collabs with people who have large audiences and are running events, and they raffle this baby off. I send a few and they get to look like someone who's in touch with a bunch of authors, and I get to have my book get some exposure. So that's been helpful as well. So clients, and then those little collaborations. And then I also have a YouTube channel, and the videos and the workbook point back and forth. The workbook has QR codes to the videos, and then the videos say, did you know there's a workbook? So they kind of work together in that way.
I like that you have leads going kind of all directions back to the other sources, so that it's a closed loop. Once they kind of find their way in, they start discovering all these other things you're doing. And this is one of the reasons that I'm excited about the Kindle cross promotion campaign, because it kind of boosts energy. I heard from quite a few people who have older books, 5+ years old, that are evergreen, that they'd sort of moved on from, like as the author, it's a thing they did 8 years ago, but this got them excited about it and seeing the response and starting to get some reviews coming in and realizing like this book has a longer shelf life, that doesn't have to just be like sitting there gathering dust. And I also know a few people that are kind of on the path that like Penny's on, about publishing a book and knowing that the next campaign is coming. They're like, I have to have this thing out by October so I can be part of your November, I love helping entrepreneurs become successful authors. That's sort of driving me right now. And so if I can help people have timelines that they stick to, because they know they can be part of this. I actually had someone for my first campaign. It was launch week. Our campaign was that book's launch week. So what a cool timing, to have all this excitement and energy on this book. I heard Penny earlier. I'm going to come back to you, Penny, talk about how this book was clearly tied to some business goals you had. And that's my next question, because, writing a book that's supposed to help our businesses, that's the goal of all these books. So you were tying it to some having some more buzz around your speaking. Tell us how that's gone. Like, have you been able to, have you seen the book help you land certain opportunities or put you in front of certain people? Like, how is the book actually kind of tied back into the business strategy.
No doubt. Like you said, for me, it was my business card, right? So I wasn't afraid to give it away for free and offer it so that people could read it. And then they, would bring me in to speak. And really that's the end goal for me. I mean, yes, I'd love my book to get in a lot of hands, but the end goal is for me to come talk to your group. And it absolutely escalated my career, made me the expert in that space, right? More visible expert, let's put it that way. And also it elevated my fees. So it, being that expert and recognized and being more booked allowed me also to increase my fees and be able to sustain higher fees. So absolutely, it kicked off my career and it's been woo. And that's the goal of the new book too, right? Is to bring that next level of leadership and continue that trajectory. So it's very, very helpful.
Irma, what about you? How have the books positioned you, like when you're thinking about your business goals? Like how did that all work together as you were approaching this? And
well, I'm a consultant and a speaker, and an author. So it what business do you know doesn't have problems? And it's a problem solving model. So it has helped me get on stage. By the way, Robbie, I saw somewhere where you're the president for your local NSA chapter.
I'm a membership director. Yeah.
A membership director. Oh, great. I was just voted in as president-elect. So I'm excited about that.
Congratulations. So NSA, by the way, for those listening, we're the folks who speak. They're the ones who listen. NSA stands for National Speakers Association.
Sorry, I should have explained that.
It's all good.
So anyway, it's helping me get on stages, which is exactly where I want to be. And my second, my dream, I'm still one of those people that believes in the big dream, right? Is to get on stages with employers across the world and help employers and employees really gel. Because when people work on problem solving, they think, well, how can I solve this for me? But if they're looking at a bigger picture, which is easy to do, it's very well defined in my book, then you're going to win exponentially, which is the X in WinX. So it's really come across well for me that way.
That's awesome. Erin, we'll bring you into the conversation. How does the book tie into the business goals? And were you clear about those connections as you were writing the book?
I think I was not super clear about it all in the beginning with the first book. I really was thinking this is for my students and that's what it is. But then after that, I started the YouTube channel. And so when this next book, the workbook, came along, I was a little bit more purposeful about that. And yes, I think like Penny said, I wasn't sure if it would be true. You write a book and now you're seen as an expert, but boom, it makes a difference to people to legitimize. And that's been very helpful. And then I had this theory of, I want to have an ecosystem where things feed one another, like the channel, the talks, the speaking, the books. And there was one moment where I found I had succeeded because a new client came through and I said, how did you find me? And he said, well, we were worrying about our team's writing. So my, colleague and I were watching YouTube videos, found your videos. So we thought, oh, this lady has a book, bought the book, and then said, we got to hire this lady. And so that was what I was hoping for. And that was the one model where I said, it's working, but it very much can be a passport to new business and new connections.
That's such a good pipeline that you set up, and to see that it's working. That's actually, and I'll come back to you, Erin, for this one. I want to know more about that because there's lead magnets. So for those who are not clear on that, this is like a resource, usually a PDF, maybe a video, maybe a compilation of resources that you share through a zip file that tells people, go to this link, in the book, go to this link and you'll get all these resources, maybe a worksheet, maybe a to-do list or something like that. And those are opt-ins, meaning people to give an email address in order to get access to that resource. But now they're on your email list and you can nurture that relationship. Erin, did you plant little things like that throughout your books? I
did, and slightly related, though different maybe. I do also use that idea on my website, where if you'd like to get something free, you'll be on my list. And it's the introduction and chapter 1 of this workbook. So they can see, what is this whole thing going to be like if they want to consider getting it. And then as far as planting little secrets and whatnot, little tricks, I've got 24 QR codes throughout here that go to different videos. And so they might say, I don't really feel like reading this explanation. I just want to do the problems. So I'm going to watch her video and do the problems instead of reading. And that's fine, But so yes, I've gotten better. I didn't do this with the first book at all, of learning ways that I can create connections that one thing will lead to another like that.
For my first book, I came to the realization when I was like, oh, it's time to market, that I needed to find a way to get people back to my email list, but I didn't have content. So I did 2 things. One, I recorded the audio version of the book using my podcast mic, and I put it up on my website as individual files that you can play or download. And I made that the lead magnet, the opt-in bonus for the paperback. So if you get the paperback, you get the secret link to go get the audio file. And then for the ebook, I found 24 individually formatted, I made 24 individually formatted blog posts as PDFs with a Creative Commons license so that they could be freely shared as long as they weren't modified or sold. And it was concepts from the book. So if you were really excited to share certain concepts in the book, you could grab that version via the blog post PDF and then share it out. And it had my contact info and all that. And it's still floating around. Like we're talking like 8 years later, I'm still knowing that information is still floating around out there. So sometimes it's not about creating new things, it's about repackaging. And I can share more in a moment about how I've thought about that for my last 2 books. But first, I'm going to go over to Irma. How did you draw people from the book to your email list? Did you have any direct paths from the book?
Yes, I have forms in my book that are downloadable. So for the 8-step problem solving model, I have those steps. I have another one for, how to actually compare different options to see which one's the best. So I have numerous forms. Now, a mistake I made was I also put a picture of the forms in the book. So they don't, although it's so much easier if they download the form, because you could enter information right in it. You could save them. It's a lot better if you download, but I don't think I would have done that again.
Or maybe you would have put like the top half just to give them a glimpse.
Yes.
Yes. Not have to put the whole, tricky.
Yes.
All right. Tricky things. I have some thoughts on that. Penny, how did you sort of approach this?
I don't really have a lot that's in the book, but I have lead magnets for people to get to the book, like supplemental things. That's something that I could have done a lot better. At the end of my book, I do have some QR codes for people to go to get my previous book and to get access to what I call my learning center. So for people who buy the book, they get access to a number of additional items like a quiz and an assessment that comes with that. So for the first book, there was a distraction quiz, and they can find out whether they're a time zombie or a squirrel. So like in a fun way. And that's also a lead magnet to get people in. So it can be used either way, right? So if they buy the book, they can get it. Or if they want to get introduced to me and my content, they can take that as a lead magnet and then come into my world.
So I think the answer here, Penny, is yes, I did do it. Because you did do it. And you had a whole learning center the way you described it. So because it could be as simple as just one quiz, but if you have a lot of resources over time, for instance, Erin, all of those videos that your QR codes write to YouTube, I made a PDF of my YouTube videos with like links. And I put them in, because when they're on YouTube, it's hard to organize them. They're all in like that one channel. So I put sections. And that was one of the resources in my latest book, Breakout of Boredom, Low-Tech Solutions for Highly Engaging Zoom Events, was all these videos that are freely available on YouTube. It's just that they're organized, right? So like that could have been my only thing, but I also put checklist and step-by-step tutorials and run of show. I put a lot of other information. I even have a bonus in there that is not available at all in the book. And so I also, like Penny, make all the bonus content available. If people go to the book's landing page, I say, oh, before you get the book, do you want to download this bonus content? And then if they do, they're sent to the Amazon page right after, and the content's sent to their inbox. And if they're like, nah, I'll get the book first, they can skip it. But now they're going to click my Amazon affiliate link and go buy the book. And then in the book, it then says, do you want to get access to all this? And I send them to a different landing page because those people already bought the book. So there's no marketing. It's just like, here's your bonus content. And so for the second book, which is Smallest Big Results, Launch a Successful Offer No Matter the Size of Your Email List, one of the main pieces of that book is the Wake Up Your Network workbook. And so similar to what Irma's talking about, I spelled all that out, but then I made a whole workbook by formatting it and getting screenshots and making a nice little PDF so that's kind of, I mean, there's a lot of information in that download, but that's like a key piece that even years later, I'm still talking about. And in fact, still using as part of my work, I have a Wake Up Your Network mastermind where people do some of that process of building their list of prospects and then come to a 2-hour call to discuss strategies in a group setting. So it's like, and they don't have to buy the book, right? They could just do that, but most of them then end up buying the book. I wanted to know in a moment your advice for writers who are working on a book that will help them grow their business. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. All right. So Penny, do you have any advice for someone who is working on a book to help them grow their business?
I shared a couple of things that I already shared. Don't be afraid to give it away for free so that you can get it in people's hands. And I talked about interviewing ahead of time. I think also, so like one of the things that I did was the people that I quoted in my book, I wanted to let them know and sent them a book, right? And excuse me. And so that's a good way to build your business and to get people is to have those influencers who are like, hey, that's great, you quoted me, and even I know a lot of people are doing this with their podcast as well, is you can interview those people who you want to be your clients and include them into your book, and they're more likely to share it and be interested in, further engaging with you. So those are just a couple of quick things.
I love that. That's great. Erin, you want to jump in here with your tips or advice for writers?
Yeah, I have one. I was inspired when Penny said that the book became something different than originally. And I wanted to share with people that with both my books, I think people get nervous going in, like, how will I know the order, the organization, what am I going to do? But you just do it, and then it fixes itself. And it's like, don't be afraid to let the whole thing collapse and be like, chapter 5 needs to be chapter 1. And that's okay. It will speak to you at some point. And with both books, I eventually thought, oh, this is the order. This is the trajectory of this narrative and these practice areas. But it wasn't in the beginning. It took a while.
I remember for my first book struggling with how I was going to create sections, and it was about networking at conferences. And everyone I asked, everyone said, oh, before, during, and after the conference.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but follow-up is something you have to think about ahead of time. So you know who you want to reach out to. You can draft your follow-up message ahead of time. During, you can track what cards are higher priority for you. And you should have already scheduled time after to do the follow-up. Like, I was like, so I had to come up with something else and it's like, it took a while for my brain to like break out of this sort of time frame and change it to be about inclusive. Now I'm blanking. So funny. My first book, it's strategic, effective, and inclusive networking. And so I did strategic, effective, and inclusive as my 3 sections.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But like it had to breathe a little bit, and I had to have conversations with people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erin. And Irma, what would you share as advice for writers?
Get help. You know, you may know your topic well, but if you don't know how to format, and you know, people like you and Melissa G. Wilson, I think she introduced me to you, right, Robbie? You know Melissa. She helped me a lot. So find people like you and Melissa to help get you through the process, so that the mistakes they made before, I'm assuming, is how they got people like you got so brilliant, right? And really make sure that it's something that the reader's going to benefit from, because you may have a great story, but if nobody wants to read it, it's not going to do any good. And the marketing is so much more than I anticipated. I mean, I'm still lost in the wind on that. You know, I do a lot of things for a lot of people, so they want to help me. So I got a lot of reviews from, you know, I said begging, but I also did reviews for them. And, but marketing's big. And if you don't know what you're doing, you know, get some help.
What a perfect segue for me to just remind everyone listening that the Biz Book Publishing Hub is a free resource with over 50 experts, our hub partners, who will guide entrepreneurs through the complexities of writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a business book. So you don't have to feel stuck, and you can get some great advice. If you go to bizbookpublishinghub.com, you'll find the show notes from today's episode, as well as 50 plus experts like me who want to help you become a successful author. To my audience here, I want to just do a last round, which is, where can people find you and follow your work? We'll start with Erin.
Thank you. People can find me on YouTube. It's at High Value Writing, or at highvaluewriting.com, or on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. Thank you.
Excellent. Irma.
You can find me. I have two websites, paronegroup.com and irmaparone.com is my speaking website. And I am on LinkedIn. That is the one that I'm on most. I do want to get on YouTube. That's brilliant. So look for me coming.
Well done. And Penny.
You can find me at pennieskeynote.com. And my new book site, would love everybody to come and check it out, is theresetmindset.net.
Brilliant. We'll put all those links again at the bizbookpublishinghub.com site. And we look forward to another episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.